Okay, good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about the Anapanasati Sutta. That's mindfulness of breathing. So Ana means in-breath, Pana means out-breath, and Sati means mindfulness. So it's mindfulness of in and out breathing. So first of all, I want to show where it sits in the overall sort of path that the Buddha has taught us. Our goal or our reason for being here, for meditating, is to bring an end to suffering, to be happy. And the Buddha described the Noble Eightfold Path as the path to achieving this ending of suffering, achieving this happiness. And Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, it's sort of focusing on the last two steps of the Noble Eightfold Path. And the last two steps are mindfulness and then samadhi, which means stillness, bringing the mind to unity, from diversity to unity to stillness. And the Noble Eightfold Path, when the Buddha is sort of describing it in detail to his disciples, he calls it the gradual training. So the Noble Eightfold Path and the gradual training are the same thing. It's just that one is just sort of an outline, and then the other one, the gradual training, just has more details attached to it. And if you've been around the teachings of the Buddha long enough, you will have heard of another sutta called the Satipatthana Sutta. And that one is made up of the word sati, which means mindfulness, and upatana, which means application, applying. So it's the application of mindfulness. So once you've got your mindfulness established, where do you place it? Where do you apply it? Like at this moment, I could be looking at all of you on the Zoom screen, so I could be mindful. I could place my mindfulness on the Zoom screen, or I could place my mindfulness in the room at the live attendees, or I could put it onto my body and feel my body sitting in the chair. So the Satipatthana Sutta is just sort of describing the four broad areas where we can apply our mindfulness: to the body, to feeling tones, to the mind, or to principles of nature, which we call Dhamma. And I just want to briefly mention that there's quite often a misunderstanding about these two suttas, the Anapanasati Sutta, the mindfulness of breathing, and the Satipatthana Sutta, the application of mindfulness. It's often misunderstood that Anapanasati is teaching us how to still the mind, and that Satipatthana is teaching us about insight, how to come to insight. And the actual reality is that both of these suttas are teaching us about stilling the mind, quieting the mind, and then the insights just happen naturally. When the mind is very still, it can see incredibly clearly. And then when you can see clearly, then the insights just come. So it's not something we have to do. It just happens. Okay, so I'm just going to screen share. I've got the Anapanasati written out here. I'm just trying to, let's see. Oh, there we go. So if you want to look this up, the Anapanasati Sutta is found in the middle length sayings of the Buddha, Majjhima Nikaya, number 118. So it starts, meditators, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is very fruitful and beneficial. Mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, fulfills the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation. So that's what the Satipatthana Sutta is talking about, is the four places, the 4 applications of our mindfulness. So right here, the Buddha is telling us that we are practicing the Satipatthana Sutta when we practice the Anapanasati Sutta, or the teachings within these suttas. So very similar. The 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, when developed and cultivated, fulfill the 7 awakening factors, and the 7 awakening factors, when developed and cultivated, fulfill knowledge and freedom. So knowledge and freedom here means freedom from suffering. So it's referring to full awakening. So the beautiful thing, if you choose mindfulness of breathing as your meditation object, it can take you all the way to full awakening. And how is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated to be very fruitful and beneficial? It's when a meditator gone to a wilderness or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut sits down, cross-legged, sets their body straight, and establishes mindfulness in front of them. So what the Buddha is telling us is it's helpful to find a quiet place. That just supports us. Maybe when we're really accomplished in our meditation practice, we can do it in a noisy environment, but it's very, very supportive to us when we're learning to have good conditions, to have, a comfortable temperature, not be exposed to all kinds of mosquitoes or whatever, and to have a quiet place. And then sitting down cross-legged, that's because in the time of the Buddha, everybody sat on the floor and sat cross-legged, so it was very comfortable for them. So it just means sit down in a comfortable position. You do not have to be cross-legged. And establishing mindfulness in front of you, this doesn't mean somewhere in front of the body. This is an idiomatic expression that means making it a priority, like somebody who's at the front of the line or the front of the class. Establishing mindfulness in front means making it a priority, that's what you're looking at. And then this is interesting to notice that before we even start the mindfulness of breathing practice, we have mindfulness established within us. And so how do we do that? And that's mostly through how we live our daily life with the first 6 steps of the Noble Eightfold Path. As I said, mindfulness of breathing is leading us through the last 2 steps, but it's the first 6 steps. So if we're leading a moral life, then we're not racked with remorse that's sort of pulling our mind away. If we're leading a simple life with contentment, then we're not being distracted with all kinds of desires or whatever. So it's following those first 6 steps. And this is the next topic that I will be presenting here, is the gradual training, the expansion of the Noble Eightfold Path. So we'll be going over those 6 steps in detail, plus the last 2 as well, coming up soon. So it's following in our daily life the first 6 steps of the Noble Eightfold Path that allows us to be mindful, to have present moment awareness. And another thing that you can do once you sit down to do your meditation practice is to start with a body scan, just moving your mind through your body, relaxing each of the parts, making sure everything's supported and comfortable. And that's just helping you bring your awareness into the present moment through the body scan. And then trying to do this eventually without words, like we might use words at the beginning, but if we can let go of the words, then our mindfulness can get deeper if we don't have words in between the experience, our experience. And then with the next slide here, we're going to start the mindfulness of breathing. And what my teachers have emphasized is that we move to the mindfulness of breathing when the breathing comes to us. We don't have to go out and grab it. We can just say, be doing our body scan, getting our body comfortable. And then when our body's comfortable, it's not speaking to us anymore, and we're sitting in a quiet place, then the only thing we're going to be aware of is our breathing, because it's the only thing happening in that space. So, when you're doing the body scan and you get comfortable enough that you're not really aware of anything else, but just all of a sudden noticing this breath coming in and out, then that's the moment to switch. That's the moment to start breath meditation. And the analogy I like is sort of the picture of lying very comfortably on a beach. You're very relaxed, you're very comfortable, and you're hearing the waves of the ocean coming in and out. And that's like the breath coming in and out of your body. So as you're lying there on the beach and hearing the waves coming in and out, you're not having to do anything. You don't have to do anything to make the wave come in or make the wave go out. You're just aware of it. You're just hearing it. So it's the same thing with your breath. You don't want to be like forcibly breathing in and forcibly breathing out. You're just lying there or sitting there very comfortably, and you just notice, breath's washing in just like the wave coming in, and then the breath washes out just like the wave going out. So you're not doing anything. And the whole thing about this aspect of our practice is we're letting our doer have a holiday. Our brain has 2 parts, a knower and a doer. And when we're practicing this mindfulness of breathing, we're just letting the doer have a nap, have a holiday. And we're just sitting there and just knowing that breath coming in, knowing that breath going out. It's just very relaxed, very peaceful, very comfortable. So when we get to this place, we're going to now start the mindfulness of breathing. So the Anapanasati Sutta is divided up into 4 parts, just like the Satipatthana. They almost mirror one another. 4 parts: the body, feeling tone, mind, and principles of nature, or Dhamma. So we start here with the body, and the breath is one aspect of our physical body. So the Buddha starts, just mindful, I breathe in. Just mindful, I breathe out. So initially you're just aware, breaths coming in, breaths going out. And then the next part is breathing in long, I know. I'm breathing in long. Breathing out long, I know. I'm breathing out long. Breathing in short, I know. I'm breathing in short. Breathing out short, I know. I'm breathing out short. So what this stanza is just giving us a skillful means to keep our mind interested, not allowing it to get bored and wandering off. And you're certainly not wanting to tamper with your breathing and trying to make your breathing long or trying to make it short. Again, your doer is having a holiday, having a nap, and this is just your awareness, just being aware of the breath coming in and coming out. But just to make it a little more interesting, you're just noticing, is this a long breath or a short breath or a medium breath? And it really doesn't matter what length of breath it is. This is just giving your mind something more to sort of focus on so it doesn't wander away. It's keeping it interested. And if your mindfulness is very strong at this point, you can skip this step. Next part, I practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing the whole body. Now, this is referring to the whole body of the breath. So now you have the opportunity, if this is helpful to you, to notice the first moment the breath starts to come in. And then just stay with the breath all the way as it's coming in, coming in, coming in. And then just notice when that stops. The in-breath has stopped. And then does the out-breath start right away, or is there a little pause there? So noticing that pause if it's there. And then noticing the first moment of the out-breath starting. And then staying with it as it's going out, going out, going out. And then it stops. And you notice when it stops. And then does the in-breath start right away, or is there another little pause? So it's just allowing your mind to just be aware of this whole breath. Coming all the way in, maybe pausing, coming all the way out, perhaps pausing. Next stanza. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, stilling the breath. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, stilling the breath. Now be careful with the wording here. Don't take this to mean that your doer has to wake up and start doing something. Your doer's still on holidays. Your doer's still having a nap. And this stilling of the breath, this smoothing out, this calming of your breath just happens naturally. When your doer's having a nap and you're just aware of this breath coming in and out, it's a very peaceful process, and it's just going to start smoothing out all by itself. Okay, now we move to the second tetrad, known as Vedana, or feeling tone. So this is not referring to elaborated feelings like boredom or anger or happiness. This is just referring to the immediate sort of primitive feeling tone that happens with every sensory experience. So every time we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, or think something, we have a Vedana, a feeling tone that accompanies it instantaneously. And there's three of them: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So as we're experiencing our breath, we're also going to have a Vedana. If you have asthma, then it's probably going to be an unpleasant Vedana. For most people, it might be just neutral. But when we are just focusing on the breath, then usually it's a pleasant Vedana that arises. And then this builds into a very powerful experience of joy. So the next the wording is, I practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing joy. And the Pali word for this is piti. I breathe like this. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing joy, or piti. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing happiness. And the Pali term for happiness is sukha. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing happiness, sukha. So the analogy I was given, I believe by Thich Nhat Hanh, to understand the difference between piti and sukha, was imagining you're out in the desert and it's hot and you don't have anything to drink and you're thirsty and you're feeling kind of miserable. And then you see ahead of you an oasis with shady trees and a clear pool of water. And so then you're so excited, like, oh, in a few moments, I'm going to have shade, I'm going to have water. And so it's that's piti. And then when you arrive at the oasis and you dive into the water and you drink the water, you quench your thirst, you cool your body, and then you come out and you sit under the tree and go, that's sukha. And so these can arise together, but usually the joy sort of hides the sukha. If you're experiencing the piti, which is sort of more energetic, it sort of can cover up the sukha. So it's when the piti settles and falls away that you really experience the sukha part. And Ajahn Brahm says that when the knower is just knowing without the doer interfering, this gives the knower a lot of energy, and that energy is accompanied by piti and sukha. And this just happens naturally. It's not something we do. We're just being there, being aware of the breath. And as we're aware of the breath, we're just noticing the subtle peace, the subtle contentment, subtle joy of the touch of the breath, free from any striving, any doing, and noticing this joy strengthens it. The next stanza is, I practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing mental processes. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing mental processes. So at this point, the breath is starting to become quite subtle, and at times you may not physically feel it. So you're starting to experience the breath through a different sense door, no longer through the body, through the physical body, but through the mind. So that's what's meant by experiencing mental processes. So I don't know how to explain this, but my experience is that when my breath disappears, there's still some kind of a mental knowing that I'm breathing. I know that I'm breathing in or out, but there's no physical sensation, but there's some kind of a mental knowing. And there's also the mental knowing of this piti and sukha. So at this point, piti and sukha may become, the breath may be in the background as it comes and goes. And the piti and sukha our main object of meditation at this moment. So what happens as our breath becomes more and more subtle and peaceful, it's like our brain may not sort of have the ability to pick up the subtleness initially, but after a while, the brain sort of catches up with the subtleness of breath. And so what you experience is the breath disappears, and then it seems to reappear, but it's not that it's jumping up and down. It's just that the brain is catching up with the subtleness. It's learning how to experience something that's very subtle. So the breath becomes subtle, seems to disappear, but the mind becomes more able to pick up that subtleness, and so experiences it again. But then the breath becomes more subtle, so seems to disappear. The brain becomes more able to pick up the subtleness, and so experiences it again until you stop experiencing it. But that's a very common experience, to have the breath disappearing and then reappearing. And that's what's going on. And I just want to say a few words about piti. So piti, of the two, piti and sukha, piti is the more energized experience. And you often feel this in your body. It can feel like having goosebumps with like your hair standing on end. It can feel like tingles in your body. It can feel like energy sort of moving or rushing up and down your body. It can feel like your body's very light and expanding and filling the room. And there can be some very strange experiences as well. So don't worry about these. They're very normal and common. Don't focus on them, because our goal here is to take the mind from diversity, all the diversity of the sensory world, and bring it down into unity, into stillness, into peace, into quiet. So we don't want to be going out and watching all these different things. Just stay with the breath, or the knowing of breath, or when that's gone, just with the piti or sukha, the joy, the quiet, subtle joy. Don't worry about all the physical things happening to your body. And this is just going to eventually settle. It's like having a glass of water that has some dirt in it. If you let it sit, that silt just gradually settles down to the bottom of the glass, and you have a glass of clear water. So these more energized sort of experiences of piti will just eventually settle. The next, thought we just did that one. Oh, no, sorry, there's one word that's different. I practice like this. I'll breathe in stilling mental processes. I practice like this. I'll breathe out stilling mental processes. So this is what I was just talking about with that glass of water and the silt, just gradually stilling. So again, you're not, the doer is still having its nap or still on holidays. This is just knowing, this is just all unfolding naturally with time. Okay, now we're in the third tetrad, mind. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, experiencing the mind. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, experiencing the mind. And this is when we have a nimitta that arises. Nimitta means sign, And this is usually light, or sometimes it can be a more elaborated sort of images, visual images. So now, again, we're experiencing the breath just totally through the mind as this light or as these images. So before the mind has settled down, the experiences can be more complex, more diverse. So you might see a landscape. I know I used to see Buddha rupas, like images of the Buddha just pop, or a mandala pop. Or it can just be lights, but at first they could be just like pinpoints, or they can be blobs, and they can have colors, and they can move. So this is when the mind is still having diversity before it comes to unity. So best not to focus, just stay with the feeling of subtle joy, peace. Don't focus on these images when they're in this sort of moving or complex phase. That again is going to settle, just like our glass of water, until we just have a light that's filling our visual field and is very steady. And this is the commonest way to sort of have this mind experience. Not everyone gets the light, but I haven't spoken or talked to anybody who settles the mind without the light. So I'm not too sure. I can't say right now what that experience is like. But it's very, very common for people to have the experience of light at this phase. I know I've had what's called a feeling nimitta. And that would be, my breath would have been completely gone, but I had a knowing of breathing in my mind. But I would have a very strong physical sensation of a breath coming in and coming out. But I knew I wasn't breathing at the time, because even though I didn't experience the breath, there was this knowing of breath, and then this strong physical sensation of a breath coming in and out would be in between, like would be during pauses. So that's an alternative nimitta, like a non-light nimitta. It's sort of a sensation nimitta. And I certainly found if I focused on it, which we should not be doing, but when I did focus on it, it just ramped it up. And so it was like almost like I was hyperventilating. I wasn't hyperventilating, it was just this mind experience happening. Okay, next one. I practice like this. I'll breathe in being delighted with the mind. I practice like this. I'll breathe out being delighted with the mind. So our nimitta, this light, just becomes brighter and stronger, clearer. So it's just feeling delight in this beautiful light that's happening. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, stabilizing the mind. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, stabilizing the mind. So when our doer is present, then our mind is moving. So if we can just let that doer have its nap, just be, letting go, just knowing, then this experience of light becomes very still. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, freeing the mind. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, freeing the mind. So this is the moment when we enter what's called jhana. It's the culmination of samadhi or stillness. And this is sort of the moment when the sensory world, all the sensory experiences shut down. We're no longer seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, or thinking. We're just having a pure mind experience. So this is a supramundane experience. It's not something we've ever experienced in regular life. This is very different, and we're now free from the sensory world. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing impermanence. I'll practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing impermanence. So something that has always been there for us is now gone, the sensory world. And then in deeper jhanas, the sense of self is gone. So this is observing impermanence, the impermanence of something that was there, no longer being present. Ajahn Brahm gives the analogy of a tadpole. A tadpole is born in water, spends its tadpole life in water. So it's hard to sort of know exactly what water is because you've never experienced anything else. But then when it becomes a frog and hops out on dry land, then all of a sudden water's gone. It's not in the water anymore, it's on dry land. So it has a better idea of what water is when it can experience being in water and then being out of water. So it's the same thing for us. When we come out of the sensory world, then we can see the sensory world much more clearly. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing fading away. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, fading. I'll practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing, fading away. So these levels, when our mind enters the state called jhana, there are 4 levels of it, and then an additional 4 what's called arupa states. And with each of these levels, an aspect of our consciousness falls away. And so this is what's meant by observing fading away. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing cessation. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing cessation. So in this 9th state, we have the 4 jhanas and the 5 arupa states. So 9 supramundane states in all. On the final state, the name of that state is cessation of perception and feeling. So everything shuts down. So when you come out, of course, you're not observing anything when you're in cessation, but when you come out of the jhana states and then you remember that happening, then that's the observing of cessation. And when the Buddha, he reached this state on his the night of his awakening when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree. And when he emerged from this 9th supramundane state, he had such clear seeing, such clear insight into reality that he was fully awakened. I don't believe it's necessary to go all the way to this 9th state to realize awakening, but this is just how it happened for the Buddha. I practice like this. I'll breathe in, observing, letting go. I practice like this. I'll breathe out, observing, letting go. So this is after emerging from the jhana states, we see reality as it really is, and we see it with equanimity. That's not adding to it on how you want it to be, or not trying to push it away on how you don't want it to be. You're just able to see clearly. Mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated in this way, is very fruitful and beneficial. And that's because we practice this, we can become fully awakened. I'm just stopping there, and we're almost out of time. This sutta does go on to, it basically just repeats what I just said to show how that fulfills the Satipatthana Sutta, and then goes on to talk about how doing mindfulness of breathing also fulfills the 7 factors of awakening. So Anapanasati Sutta, mindfulness of breathing, can bring us all the way to full awakening. Okay, so we'll stop there and open up for questions or discussion.
I got one.
Absolutely.
So what would you say the relationship between jhana and stream entry is?
Well, stream entry is your first level of awakening, so it's going to help you realize stream entry.
So that's my understanding as well. And like, so, because I recently heard that like there's like a direct correlation of like jhana almost equates to stream entry, but I don't think that's the case.
No, because I know lots of people who are experiencing jhanas and are not yet, don't have any levels of awakening. So, but that's giving you, it's just giving you a very good platform, because it just helps with that clear seeing. It helps with the insight.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm definitely still fettered. So that's my experience as well.
Sujata.
Yes, thanks, Sanghamitta. That was a beautiful teaching, although I could have stopped at joy and happiness and just, but I want, a lot of the sutta is talking about, I observe, and I just wonder if you have any, anything you can share around this I business, because it really does get in the way of experiencing some of the deeper states of stillness. And I know I've experienced where I start, and around that joy or pity, I start to see that, oh, wow, something great is arising. Look, look, look. And then it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a sense that it's this doer or whatever it is, wanting to grab hold of the experience and not allowing it to arise naturally. So I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, like often when I'm starting my meditation, I'll just say the intention is, like I leave out my intention or I intend. And so I'll just play with the wording. And so you can do that. But certainly, like the Buddha, he used, he used personal pronouns, because it's really hard to sort of teach and get around in the world without using them. And so you have those, plus we have the concept of non-self. So I think just, rephrase the wording in a way that's sort of helpful for you. And certainly it's when you're in the jhanas that you get the experience, you get felt experience of non-self, for sure.
I think there's also, I hear this talk of using different language and this sort of thing. It's all just honestly, it's just a play of words, and it's just very much at the conceptual level. This idea that we can drop the I conceptually is sort of it's a bit of a
False.
a bit of a mirage. Yeah. When what you described, Sujata, is just craving. So I think if you think of the hindrances, it's more direct. You're dropping this conceptual overlay And, you know, I mean, we can go, yeah, the hindrances are the expression of the I, but no need. You just got excited and were craving a cool experience. It's just craving. So I think that it's more direct and more practical. Just be thinking about the 5 hindrances, the craving and aversion. And whether it's I'm craving or there is craving, like really that's going to help me that much. Craving is the issue, not the words that come before the craving. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
That's what I think. What I wanted to say.
Yeah, you can see the thought forming. So,
Yeah, I can see something wanting to come out.
if the semantics help, if they actually help, you might note that the translation that we generally say is one knows. You know, it's not I know, it's one knows. And that already, just that little semantic twist can help the mind to let go a little bit about being central as the knower. This is one of the challenges with the word the knower. It has the potential to turn it into an I very quickly. I remember looking at the Pali one time and thinking, oh, what came through to me was a translation like being one who experiences, as opposed to like if I understand correctly, yeah, that's the way it would perhaps be one way of translating it. Being one who experiences X. Anyway, I think I has nailed it. It's semantics. You won't know that experience until you've calmed the impulse, the craving impulse, enough to experience what it's like not to have that impulse.
No. Anything else before we end? Okay, see which. Okay.
Yeah, I just had one last thought just about what was just said about like the whole idea of like trying to do like mind tricks into thinking there's not a self. And like I can use all these like I can use like these linguistic gymnastics to convince myself that I'm not here. But then it's like for me, then like kind of like leads to the like the belief of not self or the belief of no self, which I don't think like I can't really see as being useful because it's like, yeah, like has been said about like, well, the experience of not having hindrances rather than like believing it, right? Because beliefs, that just makes me think of more fixed views, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I was...
Yeah, no, it's when you experience it in the non-self in John, it's like I guess the frog jumping out onto the land water. It's a very dramatic experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
Okay, so it's our 5th week of the month, so we get to do our special ending meditation. This is a reflection from one of Thich Nhat Hanh's students on letting go. Breathing in, I see the need I have to control my life. Breathing out, I let go of the need to control my life. Breathing in, I see that control is an illusion. Breathing out, I relax in my inability to control. Breathing in, I see how critical I am of myself. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be critical. Breathing in, I see all the goodness in me. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge of the goodness in me. Breathing in, I see the many ambitions I have for myself. Breathing out, I let go of the many ambitions I have for myself. Breathing in, I see that I am sufficient in all ways. Breathing out, I relax in knowing that I am sufficient in all ways. Breathing in, I see that I crave many things. Breathing out, I let go of the need to crave many things. Breathing in, I see that I have enough. Breathing out, I relax in the knowledge that I have enough. Breathing in, I see that I am too busy. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be too busy. Breathing in, I want a less hectic life. Breathing out, I relax in the quiet of this moment. Breathing in, I see that letting go can make me free. Breathing out, I am free. Breathing in, I see that by being free, I can be happy. Breathing out, I am happy. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Therese, Harry's, Blair, Ariel, Tracy, Lynn. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sanghamitta. Thanks, everybody.